and our first meetings were at Central Piedmont. Now, it's all about looking at maps, looking at old maps, and working out where the old roads are and features of old maps, and also trying to use modern technology to examine this and put this all together. So we do focus, as I will point out, mainly on Mecklenburg County. Yes, here's the Mouzon map from 1775, when Mecklenburg County was much bigger than it is today. And so we focus on Mecklenburg County, and because a lot of our members, sort of local historians, are from Mecklenburg County, but we also have a contingent from South Carolina and down in the Orangeburg area, and so we focus on these two areas and have meetings. Usually one in South Carolina in the summer, which is such a great idea, isn't it? And the other is in the fall in Charlotte. So we focus on looking at the old maps, looking at the roads, looking at the historic features, particularly from the colonial and revolutionary eras, and sort of trying to resolve sometimes some controversies or even controversies, trying to resolve these to where there might be mistakes on old maps. So this is what the Historic Mapping Congress does. We sort of get together when we can in person or online right now, and just have a good old discussion about maps. So let's go to Mecklenburg County, which is where our focus is, and I put together this map of the Seven Sisters. The original. When the Scots-Irish came down here, I'm just not going to request the remote control on screen. No, I'm not going to do that. It looks so. When the Scots-Irish came down here, they set up they just sort of settled all across the area here, and there wasn't a Charlotte, of course, and at that time, their original meeting places were the Presbyterian churches, which were the meeting houses, and these got later on called the Seven Sisters. And I'm sure you've all worked out, looking at that list there, that there's more than seven. And that's because if you look through all those records and you find the lists don't all agree. There isn't one standardized list of the Seven Sisters. I'm not even sure that Center was ever actually in Mecklenburg County. And of course, some of them, like Poplar Tent and Rocky River, are now in Cabarrus County. But there we go, the Seven Sisters. So the roads that went out to these churches, these meeting houses, were often this would be the name of the road. That would be the road to the Providence Church. It became Providence Road. And so there's the Providence Church. Of course, that's not the original church, the original Providence Church. It was probably a log cabin, but it's goes back to the 19th century. So this was, the road names were connected with these church buildings. That was one thing. Another thing was you had the Catawba River over there out to the west, and going out to the west, crossing the Catawba River was rather an ordeal. Today you just zip over on a bridge and just look out the window. But back then you had to go over a ford, when the river was low. And there were sometimes there were many fords. I just put a few on the map here, but there were many fords across the Catawba. So going out to the ford, there would be a road like the Tuckasegee Ford Road or the Beatties Ford Road. These are the roads which you could go out to a place where you could cross the Catawba. I think I took this one at Lands Ford, and you can sort of see, well, it does look sort of crossable, I suppose. But I was down there a couple of weekends ago, and it was really, the river was very high, and I thought there's no way you can cross that as a ford. So these are some of the names that came about for the roads. I like to bring up this one for my students because I used to teach at Harper campus, and you could look out of the window and see Nations Ford Road running right by the campus. And I would say to my students, just you want to see some history, there is Nations Ford Road, which was the road to the nation of the Catawba. I think sometimes these roads move a bit, and that's one of these, one of these discussion points of the Historic Mapping Congress, like, where was the original road? Where did it go? Over in the UK, we're pretty sure where the Roman roads went, even though they're 2,000 years old. But sometimes it's not 100% sure where these roads were. So we have one of the sort of, you often hear about the Great Wagon Road. And the Great Wagon Road, here we are, this part of it goes from Philadelphia up there in the sort of upper right corner, through the Shenandoah, out to the western Pennsylvania, through the Shenandoah Valley and down to where we are in the Carolinas. And of course, this is a major route for the Scots, Irish and Germans who came into this area here. It wasn't called the Great Wagon Road at the time that people were using it back in the 18th century. This is a name, pretty sure this is a name that came about later, and people would have thought, if you lived here, of a road north or the road to Salisbury, but it wasn't called the Great Wagon Road, as we might sort of think of it, the I-85 or something like that. So this is the, later on, we give it this name, and it was a very important route into this area here. And part of this whole, the colonial use of the old Native American trails, which were already in existence before Europeans came here. When I first got here to Charlotte about 30 years ago, or something like that, it's Trade and Tryon, and the lady looking out to see what she can see. I had a question about that, because you hear everywhere in Charlotte's history, well, there was a crossing at Trade and Tryon. Of course, that's why Charlotte's there. It was a crossing of two roads. And I really wondered about that, because when you look at the Mouzon map, go back to the Mouzon map, which I was quite familiar with, I can't see a crossroads. I can see Charlotte, or as it is on the map here, Charlottesburg. And you can see the courthouse, and you can see where a branch of a Sugar Creek crosses the Great Wagon Road, or a branch of the Great Wagon Road. But I don't see a crossroads, right? It's not on that map. So I thought, well, is there a crossroads, or is this just a story? Maybe just Thomas Polk, put Charlotte here because this is where his land was and his house was. Well, let's investigate a little bit further about that. Some of our Congress said, well, these old maps are not 100%. The Mouzon map was pretty good for 1775, but, there's things missing. So we go to another map. This one is the Cornwallis Map. I'm assuming Lord Cornwallis used this when he was stomping around this area into 1781. Here you can see Charlotte Town. You can see there, and you can see that you can see the Tuckasegee Ford Road going out to the west. It's much more obvious that Charlotte Town is the center. There's a crossroads here. You can see it on this map. This is from 1787. So these roads were probably already in existence in 1775. Just the Mouzon map didn't put it on there. A bit more investigation. Let's go to the deeds. And here we are. This is from 1767. And you just love these old deeds. This is, here we are. It explains exactly where it is, beginning at the white oak. Okay. And then you go to a pine. And then you go to a hickory. And then into a black oak sapling. And so it's all pretty obvious where this area of land was. This is the original 360 acres, and Jim often talked about that, and we would discuss this 368 acres and how they paid for it. And this is the original site of Charlotte. And by the way, a pole, this is one of these things I was supposed to learn at school about rods, poles, and perches. Pretty useless, but I think it's about 5.5 yards is a pole. and something like there's 160 square poles makes up an acre. So something like this. But here we are. It says, look, if you see here, look, it says, right at the end, it says, including the crossroads, all the way to the beginning, including the crossroads and containing by survey 360 acres of land. Yes, there was a crossroads. Whatever the crossroads was, there was a crossroads right there where Charlotte is, where Thomas Polk had Charlotte, managed to engineer to get Charlotte put there. Okay, so that's one controversy sorted out. Well, what about North Tres, another one? Well, we all know why it's called Tryon Street. The main street in Charlotte, named after William Tryon, the British governor here from 1765 to 1771. And, why did they call it Tryon Street? Well, he came here in 1768 trying to elicit support to suppress the regulators up in Alamance County, in the Granville district. And he wasn't going to get the British troops out. He wanted to get the militia to help. And the militia from Mecklenburg County, the leaders here, did support Governor Tryon. It was a sort of a kind of a you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours sort of deal. Like they wanted something from Governor Tryon. And Governor Tryon wanted something from them. So they named the street Tryon Street in honor of Governor Tryon. And yes, they did go out and help Governor Tryon in 1768 and 1771 to suppress the regulators. But one question I have, which I've never got to the bottom of in all my 30 years here, why did they keep the name Tryon? I mean, did we have a revolution here? I mean, weren't they fervently patriotic? Why didn't they change the name to Fayette Street or something like that? Why did they leave it with the name of the British governor? I don't know. And if anybody's got any ideas, let me know. Okay. Other road names, Sardis Road. I live out near there. And of course, that's a bit later. That's after the Revolutionary era. But Sardis Road goes out to the Sardis Presbyterian Church. And there's also, there used to be a community called Sardis, I think, which was sort of behind East Meck. So there's a lot of Sardis names around where I live over there, sort of close to Matthews. Road names also going to places, going out to, it goes by close to my house, Monroe Road. I call it Monroe Road, but I think if you live out in Monroe, you call it something different. It's like the Beaufort and Beaufort thing. I think if you live in Monroe, it's Monroe or something. There's another way of pronouncing the town if you live in the town. But that's the road that goes out to Monroe. And of course, another Albemarle Road goes out to Albemarle. So you've got road names going to churches, to fords, to places. Then you have the sort of mystery names, which are usually there's a good reason. You probably know why it's called Remount Road. This is, of course, from much later, from the time of World War I, from the time of Camp Green, when Wilkinson Boulevard over there was Camp Green there was an enormous stables because people still had horses out there for the forces who were training out at Camp Green. And I understand Remount Road is connected with the enormous stables which we had there, which were huge. And then there's here's another one, another question for you. Anyone got any ideas? Lawyers Road. Okay, why is it called Lawyers Road? Okay, were there lots of lawyers out there? Well, that was the middle of a countryside. Why on earth would they be living out there? And so I tend to think, my own personal theory is that there's somebody living out there called Lawyer, and it was just called Lawyers Road because there was somebody with that name out there. But if you've got some ideas, let me know. And now here's another one. Jim was always very interested in this one, and would have talks about this several times with the Congress. Potter Road. I don't know if you may have heard of this. You probably have. Now this picture here, this image is a sort of a little bit of road. Here's Kilbourne. It's over near what was once the Eastland Mall. This is Kilbourne over here, and it's on going up Central. And there's a sort of smidgen of road over here. And there was once a major road running round Charlotte called Potter Road. And some years ago, I used to sort of live over there, and I found, out in the woods behind Sheffield Park, in the sort of, just in these woods, there's an old road. And I thought, what on earth is this old road doing out there in the middle of nowhere, in the sort of in the woods? Well, it's part of Potter Road. And this is the mysterious Potter Road, which went from the south up to the north and sort of bypassed Charlotte. And there's a sort of question about it. Why was it called Potter Road? This was a question, and if you look up and sort of research about it and look up newspaper articles about it, and you find all these theories. One was, there was a British general called Potter who forged a road through here in 1775. No, the British weren't doing anything such as that here in 1775 anyway, so no. Oh, well, what about it was a road to Charleston for the pottery industry? Well, that makes absolute sense. Well, probably that wasn't it. The two folks who were really involved in this, one was Larry Barden, who was from UNC Charlotte, and he was a sort of a Potter Road expert, and Jim also did some research on this and found there in the court records going back to 1797 that this was Gordon Potter's Road. Very likely that the Potter Road was all named after some part of it started off as Gordon Potter's Road. And interesting, Jim and I had an experience. So we used to drive down to South Carolina for meetings of the Historic Mapping Congress. We'd drive down to a place called Lugoff, and we would meet there. And so I'd had a long trip there with Jim, and we would talk together. Jim would do a lot of talking, and I'd do a lot of listening, and we'd have a good time together. And the GPS would just send us, using the GPS, it would send us along all these roads which were vestiges of Potter Road. It was really sort of quite interesting. But yes, there isn't really one Potter Road anymore, but there are little bits of Potter Road. If you look up sort of Potter Road all over North Carolina and South Carolina, little bits left of Potter Road. Well, that's Potter Road. Okay, this is I think this is one of Tom Hanchett's favorite stories about Sharon. Who is Sharon? This is who is this person called Sharon? Because when you look up all these roads, you find there's Sharon Road, Sharon Lane, Sharon Avenue, Sharon View Road, Sharon Parkway, Sharon Towers Drive, Sharon Township Lane, and Sharon Amity Road. So who is this Sharon? Is she a friend of Charlotte? Well, I'd like to tell you, as you probably know, there ain't no Sharon. It's all to do with this, the Sharon Amity Road. There's the Sharon Presbyterian Church, which is over there by South Park Mall. And there's the Amity Presbyterian Church, which is on Sharon Amity and close to Independence. And so the Sharon Amity Road connects them, and the name Sharon just took over that area around the South Park Mall as being, people like the name Sharon, but it's there isn't a Sharon. Well, another issue, well, I wouldn't say it's an issue, but I always like to bring it up. It's about the Bermuda Triangle of Charlotte, which is the Queens Road area, and why they made these circular roads, which you can just sort of be on Queens Road and go round and round and round. And fortunately, with GPS to escape from the Queens Road vortex over there. But that was something to do with the developers who, I think they just like the name Queens Road and these sort of circular roads. Well, here's something I know. I believe Linda Dalton was involved in this, and maybe some of the other members of the docents were involved with this. This is Alexanderana Road, which was over there by the campus, the Marancus, Central Piedmont Marancus campus. I used to go by it a lot. Well, it used to be called Alexanderana Road But as I know you all know, that's not the right way to spell out the name, the word. This is all named after Alexandriana. And here we are, that little park there in Huntersville, where the home of John Alexander, where that's a whole other story, isn't it? The Mech Deck was consumed by flames in 1800, and there isn't an Alexandriana anymore. There's a nice sign, but it's Alexandriana. And in 2015, I think it was, 2015, then the name was changed. We managed to get Jim Puckett was involved with this too. That changed it from Alexandriana to Alexandriana. And okay, so it conforms much more with the actual history. Which brings us to this one, which is this is a sign right near the central campus, and I would look out of my window at the in meetings that I'd have, administrative meetings, and you'd see this sign, Charlottetown Avenue, Charlottetown. It's a stretch of Independence, which was renamed Charlottetown in 2007, I think it was, and I was looking at that, and I researched in the colonial records in the days when you actually used books, and I went through the colonial records, and I can't find anywhere that it's spelled Charlottetown, like that, Charlottetown with an E. I got Charlottetown and Charlottetown and Charlotte, but not with the E. It's sort of oldie worldy, and it's sort of like Charlestown with an E, but I can't find anywhere. Of course, today with modern technology, you can do this just like in about 2 seconds. No, you can't find it. So, not having anything else to do, I wrote to the Department of Transport about it, and they said, oh, well, there was a Charlottetown Mall down the road. That's why we called it that. Yes, there was a Charlottetown Mall down the road, but it wasn't spelled like that. So I don't know if we're going to go to all the trouble to try and change it from Charlottetown to Charlottetown. I can do it virtually. There we go. Look, I've done it. There we go. Solved the problem right there. But I think we'll have to. I'm not starting a petition anytime soon to do this. So here we are. That's really what the Historic Mapping Congress is all about. This is a map we put together when our meetings are couple of years ago at the Sharp Museum of History. We often meet there now, and there are really where were all these things? What was the mental map of the people who lived here in the colonial and revolutionary era? When people came here and lived here and were working and doing things, when the battles took place during the later stages of the Revolutionary War here, what was a map? What were the locations of things and buildings and places all around this area? And there are still some questions that we have, like where exactly did the original Tuckasegee Ford Road go? Where did Providence Road come into Charlotte exactly? What route did the British Army exactly take as it came in here in September 1780? So there are really there's questions about where all these, there are some questions about where these things actually were. So that's what we do. We have a good time getting together with local historians and people who are interested in technology to try to understand this. We have a website. Here we are, historicmappingcongress.org. You can go there, and we have a pretty active Facebook site going on. As I said, we usually meet 3 times a year, once in South Carolina, and then once in North Carolina. We usually meet at the Charlotte Museum of History, and we might even be able to have an actual real-life meeting in November this year. So we'll get together and we'll have a good discussion and try to record this information about that people know. People know a lot of interesting things about this mental map of what was going on in the colonial revolutionary eras. So Jim and I have we worked for many years on this project. Jim always, one of his the things that he would comment about was that even though we're using these technologies today, and we're doing all these wonderful things with technology today, the technology of the future will be completely different and better. And he used to work with computers, and we don't use floppy disks anymore. That technology is gone. So we are trying to use technology today, but what we're using today, we just have to think, well, in the future, the technology will be way better than what we have today. So thank you very much. That was my talk today. I'll be glad to take any questions, and I will go, and I guess I will stop sharing my screen. I'll be glad to take any